Hector Bellerin, Bellerin, Hector Bellerin. Na, 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 na. Dat is het. Ja.
All right, everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Say by the Bellerin podcast, the Arsenal Football Club videocast here on the Sports Talk Live Network. I am one of your hosts, Raphael, joining you from the United States this week, joined by my full contingent from the UK, counterclockwise. From my left, I have Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, today is a good day.
Today is a very good Arsenal day. Beneath Sam on the square is Ryan. Welcome back, Ryan.
Hello, mate. I hope you're as happy as I am.
I am. And I'm sure the fans are queuing up, are happy too. And of course, last but not least, Freddie, welcome back. Good to have you here.
Cheers. Looking forward to discussing the big news.
Yes. Lots to discuss. Where should we begin? Let's begin this morning. The club has finally made it official. I mean, it was an open secret. They made us wait. But we've got it. They've got him. He's back. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is extended. He is Arsenal's captain for the next 3 years. A wonderful bit of video. Let's bring you in. Let's go down. Let's say, Freddie, let's start with you. Again, they dazzling in all ways, even though they made us wait. You know, the production was first rate. The video was, I think Ryan was describing it. So you watching it, you have goosebumps. This theme that they brought out with the Arteta video earlier in the week of family kind of pushed to the fore, amplified by the new captain who said he wanted to stay because he feels this is his family.
Yeah, it was going to have to be good, wasn't it, for the amount of time that they made us wait?
Yes, it was.
But yeah, I mean, as we touched upon last week, I think it was obviously going to be a massive announcement, so they were going to be in no rush to get it out there. They wanted to make sure that everything was perfect from the media production behind it all, but obviously the contract itself obviously would have had a lot of facets to it that they needed to iron out before they could officially say, yeah, it's done. Obviously everyone's known for quite a while that he was going to stay, but it was just about ironing out those last little bits. I mean, so glad that it's finally been announced. As you guys said, the video they released with it was amazing. The kind of touching upon previous club captains, Henry and Ian Wright, and strikers and the like, and the way that he said that he wants to leave a legacy at the club, and really be a part of something. It kind of adds to the excitement that the great start to the season that we've had as well has brought about. So obviously this now is the next stage in these exciting developments, these exciting times, and hopefully it will lead to more exciting times with some more action in the transfer window. So let's see.
And of course, they've been teasing in this long, and I mean, it's been long. It's been 2 or 3 weeks, but this runway to the announcement, his dad was part of this. He was partying with his family overseas. He was with his family here. And then they bring his dad in to the club. To me, that was the most striking, where he talked about his father was a captain, and now he's a captain for Arsenal, how much the armband means to him. We've joked about this. In the late Wenger years and the early Emery years, if you got the armband, it was like you were one of the drummers in that movie Spinal Tap. You're going to explode as soon as they put the band on your arm. And this is different. This feels different. They use that word again, family, and that really resonated with me.
Yeah. For a start, I think it's quite funny just how much not power, but how influential Aubameyang's dad's probably been throughout this whole thing. Everyone knew that his opinion on whether Aubameyang should stay or go would ultimately influence the player's decision. And it's just funny to see him involved in the announcement video. Like, he was almost as important a part in it as the player himself. But yeah, it added that nice kind of family element to it and backed up the message that Aubameyang tried to put across. This is my family, this is where I belong. And like you say, it's nice to actually have a club captain that you feel has the club's best interests at heart, who actually wants to be there, who hasn't been given the armband and then disappears soon after to try and find greener grass. looks like he's going to be there now for a while, nice and settled, and we can kind of build around him and have a proper leader who loves the club. So it's great news.
Ryan, part of the announcement, the manager's brought in, and it makes it clear in the all the chatter how thrilled he is to have him back, but makes it clear that the club is not done in the market. The club is looking for more players. I believe the number was kicked around was 2, and it has all of us kind of kicking around in mock mystery, like who might these guys be, right? I think that was as much of a thrill as getting Aubameyang in, is knowing he's just part of a plan. And obviously I think there's a linkage here, right? They couldn't have gotten him to extend without some kind of assurances that they're going to build a club around him that's worthy of his talent.
No, of course. And I said it to you guys in the group after it was announced. I said, Aubameyang wouldn't have signed if he wasn't made promises, or he known of the transfer plans that Arteta wanted to implement this summer. So I can only be positive towards that. If Aubameyang's saying he wants to stay, he sees the ambition, this is his club, this is his family, it can only mean good things going forward. And another word that opened my eyes in a few reports after was additions rather than replacements. So obviously we could have 2 additions, but we could see 3 people come in, one being the replacement for Emi Martinez, which we'll probably talk about in a little while. But it's a good time. It's exciting for the next couple of weeks as well. This is just the start.
That word addition leads to another discussion. I want to kind of hold it. I've talked to Sam about this in the but it changes my mindset about plans, and I want to work it past you guys. But I want to save that for a little bit. I mean, obviously, people want to know, what about Uwar? What about Partey? I mean, that word, let's put their names. Let's not keep the mystery, right? It seems that they're still very much in the plans. But Sam, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, Arsenal opened the season just 3 days ago. Very impressive win. You wrote a long piece about it. Kind of a lot to take away from that, a lot of good things to take away from it. Lots of ways we can parse this match, but I'll start with you. Looking at the performance, what stood out, again, from the goals and the defense and the lineup? Let's begin with that. What did you take away? I know that you were talking about this, and again, if you haven't seen it, go to our Sports Talkline webpage. He has a very lengthy, detailed write-up of the match. But share with us, as you were watching, what really jumped out at you?
I think at the start of it, when the lineups were announced, myself and a few other people, but other people were a bit sceptical about the lineup, considering we had the likes of Dani Ceballos back on the bench. He was available. We've chosen to go with El Neni in the midfield. But ultimately, I think with the team, which I have to really, really, really praise Arteta, is how resolute we were. We really nullified Fulham. They had, I don't think they had a clear chance, barring the miscommunication between Gabriel Magalhaes and Leno. But ultimately, Leno come out with a strong hand and saved us on that situation. But I think where we've completely shut them out, it was brilliant. I know people say Arsenal can be a bit weak defensively, but this game, it completely changed. We looked very dangerous on the attack. We looked comfortable. There was periods in the game where we just simply allowed Fulham to have the ball so we could get a breather. Once we've had like that 1, 2, 3 minute breather, we went again, pressed, harried, pressured. They had quite quite frankly, no answer for it. Once we got the first goal, as Ryan said in last week's pod, it was only going to be a matter of time before it was going to be 2-3, and it was. And again, speaking about Aubameyang, his goal was superb. It's an absolute carbon copy goal of what he was. I think it was against Man City. And
Liverpool as well, right?
Yeah. And it looks like that's really been worked on. You could really tell the team shape. Everyone knew where they was going to go. Tierney and Maitland-Niles made exactly the same runs to open up the defence. Willian, brilliant. Gabriel, brilliant. After that mistake early doors, people were going, "Oh, what's he doing? He looks shaky." It looked like that gave him a bit of a wake-up call. And from then on in, absolute rock. You couldn't fault him. He was absolutely superb at the back. And it made me laugh. Some of the Fulham strikers tried to run him down the line, and you just think to yourself, what are you doing? It's just not going to happen. He's just a unit, So
cheetah, right? He's just kind of mirroring them. He's like, you're not going to get past me. He looked so nonchalant about it.
Yeah. If he continues in that fashion, he's an absolute gem for us. And to be perfectly honest, with that being his first game, I'm very excited to see a lot more of him, and he's only going to get better, in my opinion. But overall, the game for us was an absolute perfect start. We couldn't ask for much more than that, to be perfectly honest.
All right, Freddie, let's bring you back, and let's bring a topic up that we discussed in the COVID rundown, which was the value that Arteta has been able to add to the squad through taking players who were considered excess, who were considered disposable, and really welcoming them back, reinvigorating them, restoring confidence. El Neni was on loan, and then he starts. And I would, like many others, was scratching my head when I saw the team squad. And, one of the moments of dread that we had in the Emery years, that we would look at the lineup and say, oh no, this match is over before it begins. And I think a lot of people saw Mohamed El Neni on the sheet and said, what is Arteta doing? And yet, it wasn't obvious watching the first. You think he's got this reputation of being hyper safe, a lot of sideways passes. But, in rewatching the match just yesterday, I noticed, the first goal that Arsenal scored came from him. He picked up the ball deep, and he did something that we associate with Granit Xhaka. He found Aubameyang on a long run, made this long diagonal pass to the back line, and Aubameyang was able to set up and pass it back and set up the goal that obviously wound up on Lacazette's toe. But, again, another unsung player who now looks like he could stay. And, watching the way that Arteta just touches these guys and like imparts like magic, I don't feel so bad about him. If he says, I want to keep this guy, he could say that with anybody. I mean, I'm becoming more of a convert, I guess, with every match.
Yeah, it's like that with transfer targets as well. It's like the club could target a player that I've never heard of, that you've never heard of, but you'd have confidence that they were the right sort of fit, or that they had a chance of being a decent player, because if the manager wants him, then his judgment's obviously good, and he's proven that. With El Neni, he's a tidy player. He's always been a tidy player. There's no doubting his ability. He's very comfortable on the ball. He's got a good engine, so he's a good sort of, he's got the good attributes for a central midfielder. The problem is, like you said, maybe a bit too safe at times. Doesn't really always bring you that much. But I completely agree. Against Liverpool in the Community Shield, I thought he was the best player on the pitch. And then against Fulham, he's carried that. He earned his place. Arteta's obviously said, you played great in the last game. Keep going. Show me what you can do. And maybe that's a reason why he's taking a little bit more, a few more risks now. He knows he's got something to. He really has to. He is playing for his place. I don't expect him to be a fixture of the team, as a starter throughout the season. But look, if he doesn't move on, then then he's shown that he could probably play a decent role in the squad. I'd also say that from Arsenal's point of view, we've got other midfield targets that we want to bring in, and as a result, we need to sell some players, and one of those would be Torreira. He's going to get you a better fee than what we would get for moving El Neni on. So I think it's not a priority right now to move El Neni on. We're not going to get a massive fee for him. If Arteta feels he can add value, then it looks like he can. I think the best example, though, of him kind of bringing back a player who looked out of sorts, who'd been written off by so many, didn't know whether he still had a place at the club, was Xhaka himself. What he's done for him is amazing. So the evidence there to show that if there's a player that feels that is sort of on the outskirts and doesn't really have much chance of playing, there's always a way back for them, and that's a really good quality to have in your squad, because it keeps people on their toes constantly and gives us options.
All right, Ryan, let's come back. I want to bring a conversation that we had in the group into the pod, because down the stretch, again, another one of these players who was we're left us scratching our heads, left us sometimes yelling at our screens, was Alex Lacazette. And the complaint was, here's a guy who sat too deep, here's a guy who didn't seem to know his role, or he was trying to create this kind of hybrid. I'm an attacking, and then sometimes I'm a striker, and you were constantly like bemoaning the fact that he was not playing a traditional number 9's game. And mid game, you were saying, this is, we talked about him going to Atletico and everything else, and now it looks like he might stay. But what you were saying is you saw an Alex Lacazette who looked like a proper striker to you.
Yeah, that game just showed all the best things of Lacazette. He is, on his day, a very, very good number 9. He showed all the hold-up qualities that Arteta wants his striker to have. But then he didn't just wait for the ball on the edge of the box. He was driving into the 6-yard area. And that's what got him his goal. And that's exactly what we need from him, because that's what Eddie was doing. There's a clip doing the rounds from Eddie in the Community Shield where he pressed Liverpool's defence, started an Arsenal attack, and then he was on the end of it. That's what Arteta wants from his striker. And if this is the Lacazette we're going to see this season, then great. If we can't sell him now, just try and implement him into the starting 11. Try and get him performing again, because that can only help us. And he scored the first goal for us of the season, so hopefully his confidence is sky high right now, and he's past his injuries, which in his interview after the game, where he said with one of the French outlets, he said last season he was struggling with injuries and lack of confidence. So hopefully a confident Lacazette will be beneficial for us.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm gonna come back to you here. I know you're working with people in the chat, but let's talk about this in the bigger picture, because you and I started kicking this around. But we'd assumed that Arteta was going to go forward with kids, and he had a lot of success last year bringing up Saka when he absolutely have to, and getting Nketiah and incorporating him in when Lacazette was having kind of a wobble mid-season and kind of not sorting out his position. And there was talk, well, Emile Smith-Rowe will come up this year. Joe Willock got a lot of work, but now it looks like a lot of these players who we assumed are leaving, Lacazette, El Neni, we just talked about 2 of them, might be staying. And I'm wondering if maybe, it still looks like Arsenal is pursuing OR. They still are pursuing Thomas Partey. They're still sticking with their plans of fortifying the midfield. But I'm wondering now if maybe Arteta's plan, or part of his plan, to get the squad back into the top 4 is to minimize his reliance, at least this season, on kids, and that maybe these guys who we thought would play a secondary role might be loaned out, and that players like Lacazette, players like El Neni, he wants to make sure that when he rotates, he's got experience and he's got some maturity in his roster. I mean, what do you think of that?
I think you can look at it one of 2 ways. I think that, as you say, our second string could be more experienced in the way that Arteta wants to move forward this season. Obviously, We're going to be having a lot of games, so we are going to need a slightly bigger squad. But ultimately, it depends on how Mikel wants to develop these players. Does he want to develop them in-house and integrate them into some of the games, say secondary games, cup games, Europa League games? Or does he see their progress being best served at another club, getting regular first-team football? So I think we could probably see one or two of them go out. But ultimately, I think the youngsters coming through, I think they will potentially stay around the squad and be more of a rotational option in the Europa League and cup games, because as we all know, this season's going to be very condensed. We are going to need a big squad this season, but it purely depends how Mikel views their development and where he thinks they'll get best practice.
Okay. Freddie, let's come back to that. Let's stay with Lacazette. Let's stay with the striker position. Again, another reason I think so many of us assumed that Lacazette might be moving. One, he's rumored to have a market. Juve, Atletico Madrid have been longtime targets. But then stories, certainly in the last week, hotted up the last week, that Arsenal have reignited their interest in Ozil and Edouard from Celtic. And you start doing the math. You say, okay, they've got Lacazette. They've got Aubameyang re-signed now. They still have Eddie Nketiah, and they're very happy with his development. But if they're looking at Edouard, the numbers don't add up. Somebody's got to move somewhere. How legit is the Edouard rumor? And if they are pursuing him, and if Lacazette is still fighting for a position, at least in this season, does that increase what we were saying before, the chances that a guy like Eddie Nketiah might be looking for a loan in a week or two?
It all boils down to what you said, the question that you asked. I mean, how legit is the Edouard rumor? I personally haven't seen anybody that unless I've missed something, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any journalists or any outlets that I explicitly trust that have said anything about Edouard moving to Arsenal. I think there's obviously a lot of clubs keen on him, keeping an eye on him. Arsenal definitely have watched Edouard, have been tracking him, is a player of interest, but same with a number of clubs across Europe. To answer your question the most simple way, do I think that if I was a betting man, which I may or may not be, do I think that Edouard will end up at Arsenal this summer? No, I don't. I don't.
Fair enough.
Do I think it's impossible? No. But have I heard anything? No. Do I think it will happen this summer if I had to place a bet? No.
Okay. Fair enough. All of you who are turning to Freddie, or for the rest of us for betting advice, take that for what it's worth. But Ryan, let's come back to you, okay? Because we're talking about a numbers game here. We've been talking about a numbers game for weeks, and that I think you guys have made the point repeatedly, all three of you, that, as fans play the numbers game, let's sell this player, and we all do it. We get our little pieces of paper out, we get our calculators out, and we say, how much money could they get if they sold Lucas Torreira? How much could they get if they sold Ainsley Maitland-Niles? How much could they get if Hector Bellerin was sent on? And if we cobble all this money together, can that just pay for Houssem Aouar outright, or could that pay for Thomas Partey's release clause, et cetera, et cetera? It doesn't seem as if money is the object, and you guys have been saying this for a long time. It's the numbers. The squad's too big. All right. If it's come out today that they're still pursuing two more players, and we have to assume those are the names that comprise the two players, how many players need to go out in order to accommodate two incoming? I think there's a lot of chatter on the internet, but the matter of homegrown, non-homegrown factors into this. How many exactly does Arsenal need to move? And are there variants depending on type of player that they move?
I think Arsenal need to sell 4 non-homegrown players to bring in 2. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it might be 4 have to leave to bring in 2. Then we also got to factor in that Martinez is leaving, and he's a homegrown player, and the player we're looking to bring in is a non-homegrown player, so we're going to have to look at that as well and see if we can bring in someone that register a youngster as a homegrown player. It's a very confusing way to look at things for how big our squad is. Like, it does get quite confusing, and I'm confusing myself as we speak. So, I think it's 4 that we have to get rid of to bring in 2. But I don't think it matters what positions. Arteta did say that we are pre-stocked in certain positions, so he does want to slim them down, which I assume are the fullbacks and centre backs.
Yeah,
because we're stocked there.
Question though, does loaning a player affect that calculus, or does they still say stay on the Arsenal? People want to say, well, let's loan these 3 players out or these 2 players out. That doesn't change the math any, does it?
No, if Torreira, say, for example, we loan Torreira to Torino, it wouldn't affect anyone coming in. It would still be, he's out the door, we can bring another one in. But then we'd have this same conversation next summer when Torreira came back. All right. Similar to what we had with El Nene last summer.
Let's look at potential outgoings. It seems that Lucas Torreira was announced yesterday, and I've lost track of which Italian club. It looks like he's going, Sam, to an Italian club. I think it's Torino at this point that has concluded the deal with Arsenal. That's one almost certain outgoing. I'm sorry, Torreira somewhere. Word came out before we came on the pod. Roma has come back with strong interest in Kolasinac. That could be 2. Obviously, Socrates is kind of up in the ether somewhere. We assume he's going somewhere besides Arsenal. That's possibly 3. How could they meet Ryan's quota of 4? Do we have a name or names that we could put in that plug into that formula?
Yeah,
who sticks out for you?
I think that one of our under 23 goalkeepers, Dejan Iliev, I think his name is. I'm not sure whether he's back at the club or whether he's still on loan. But if he's back at the club, I think that he's definitely one that's going to be going. But ultimately, as Ryan said, whoever doesn't really feature moving forward, I wouldn't be messing about. I'd literally just stick them straight up on the loan list, see who wants to come and take them, and I'd potentially defer the decision down the road to next year, because ultimately we need to get the replacements in. We need to get the quality, no, not replacements, quality additions in, sorry. So ultimately we need to improve our first team, which subsequently improves our second string, with some players dropping out and down into that. But yeah, I'd definitely be looking at a loan option and then deferring it to next season, because you've got to think as well, right now, would we get the most for our buck with our players? Possibly not, but if the situation around COVID improves, a lot more clubs are going to have a lot more money next season. So potentially putting them out on loan, again, could increase their value. And in turn with that, we could potentially be seeing more money come in next season. Yeah,
and it seems, Freddie, that the club is in a position where they can weather in the short term, I'm going to say next 6 months, if they have to front money and knowing that their players could come. Let's go back to this list of, again, promising youngsters who need time, who may be blocking moves, who could factor in filling the squad that Mikel wants as soon as possible. I'm going to give you 4 names, and I want you to assess for them how likely they are to go out on loan or how likely you think they are to stay, in no particular order. Eddie Nketiah, Joe Willock, Reece Nelson, and Emile Smith-Rowe.
I think there was a point in time where I thought Smith-Rowe might feature this season. I know Arteta's really keen on him, I think he's probably the most likely out of all of those to go out on loan. And
if may interject, what level? Did you go back to the Championship, or do you think he's ready for a loan at a Prem club?
Ideally, you'd want him to have a loan at a Premier League club. He did well at Huddersfield. He showed, in a struggling, in a team that wasn't great, glimpses of real promise. I'd love to see him really playing week in, week out in the Premier League to see, you get a better understanding then of what he's all about, and whether he is ready to make the step up to being an important player for Arsenal. Reece Nelson, with the arrival of Willian, you could say, could really benefit from a loan. I think last season he struggled a little bit as well. We all know that, but has he really kicked on to that level that everyone expected him to? I personally think he could really benefit from a loan, but it's one of those where he could still get games at Arsenal this season. So you weigh up, that could be equally as valuable, even though he's not going to play every week. Joe Willock, I don't expect to go anywhere, although that could potentially depend on what midfield signings we make. But I think by the time maybe we get our midfield sorted this summer, this window, sorry, it might be too late to sort a good loan move for Joe Willock, and I wouldn't want to see him go anywhere other than, any lower than the Premier League. So it would have to be another top flight team in another good league, or a Premier League team. And Nketiah, I don't think will leave on loan. There's potential for it, but I think we're still a little bit light up top if we get an injury. Aubameyang's being used out wide. Martinelli, you could say, could fill in as a striker. I think that's where his position might be long term, but he's had his injury problems. Well, he's struggling with an injury at the moment and he's still recovering. And so I think Nketiah will be kept around to give us an option. And he's competition for Lacazette. I think Arteta said it the other day. Whichever one of them is in better shape, whichever one of them is playing better, we'll get to start up front. So he's actually direct competition. So I don't think he'll go out on loan. I think Smith Rowe, out of all those three, is the most likely for sure.
Okay, dealing with mathematics, dealing with slot positions. Ryan, we should talk about two players who weren't on the roster. We've been talking about them for months and months and months. It seems like we don't want to talk about them because we want to put them out of mind. But Matteo Guendouzi, Mesut Ozil, where do they factor into Arteta and Edu's thinking, planning, structure? They're both midfielders. They're not producing. They're not even making the bench. And when you have your top two targets are midfielders, something's got to give here.
Yeah, and Edu, when the news about Arteta was announced, say he's been upgraded to the manager of Arsenal, Edu had an interview that was released after that said he was asked about Ozil, and he said that the players that perform the best, Arteta will pick them in the squad. So that tells me maybe he's not doing enough in training. So Arteta's just not selecting him because he's not giving 100% commitment, and he hasn't fully brought into what Arteta's trying to achieve post-lockdown. Because before he started every game, but maybe he come back from lockdown, just had a daughter, and he just isn't trying as hard as he was before, which I can't really tell if he is or not because I don't see training. So I'll leave Arteta to be the judge of that. And Guendouzi, I've said it numerous times. If he's here and he's here to stay, then just try and get his value back up, bring him back into the squad, see what he can do, because you never know what can happen. You see with Xhaka, he was given a chance, and now he looks like the most important player in Arteta's system. First name on the team sheet, personally for me. So with Guendouzi, people may disagree with me. I still think there's a player in there somewhere. He just needs to be brought out. So if we can't sell him, might as well just try and play him.
All right. Sam, let's move to the timetable. Again, I think at this point with Aubameyang finally in-house, certainty there. They've got Willian. Obviously, he produced straight away. They got Gabriel. He looks like goodbye, more than goodbye. They're still looking at 2 targets. Is there an urgency now? There's still 3 weeks of the window. 3 weeks from yesterday is the end of the window. It looks like it could go late if they're going to try to do one or hopefully pull off both of these moves. Liverpool's coming up in 2 weeks. That seems maybe like bringing these guys in for that match might be, just too much wishful thinking. But obviously the manager wants this sorted sooner rather than later. Are you looking for a push now in the next week with Aubameyang finally kind of pushed off the radar, off the agenda?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Aubameyang's announcement was Arsenal's next big move. I think personally, Aouar's going to be the next one. Watching Lyon v Montpellier today, he's actually been sent off. He hasn't looked up to his full standard. He looked a bit distracted in today's game, so it could potentially look a bit promising. Obviously, with him getting that red card, I believe the ban would transfer over into the Premier League anyways. But I think we should be seeing some more news definitely around Aouar and Partey. We have in sorts today. I know it's not from the best source, but John Cross has said today that Arsenal want the 2 additions, and them 2 additions are Thomas Partey and Aouar. So I definitely think within the next week things will certainly ramp up, as we well know. And it's been well documented that the transfer window within the last 2 weeks, it just basically explodes. And even if people watch the Spurs All or Nothing, or as I like to call it, the All for Nothing documentary, even Levy says in there that it's the final 2 weeks of the window that are always the busiest. So we're leading into that time frame now. So I'd imagine a lot of clubs are going to be really ramping up their interest, and I fully expect Arsenal to be up in there as well, especially with the amount of outs that are projected, and certainly with the ins that we're looking to do. So I think that I'd certainly think that we're very capable, and I'd say quite confident. I am confident of both players being at Arsenal come the end of the window.
All right, Freddie, I'm going to give you the final word this week. With all of this churn or possible churn, are you looking for anything to accelerate? Is this more of the same? Keep the wheel spinning? Any surprise moves that have kind of caught your attention that maybe we should watch? I mean, maybe not expect, but maybe watch for positions of interest or positions we should emphasize. Obviously, Arsenal needs another keeper now. Martinez just announced as we started the pod that he made it official he's no longer a member of Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah. Well, I think it's well documented who's replacing him. The young lad is coming in, which is it's been well documented. So that will be like for like replacement. Hardly any outlay for the club. So I think Matt Macy will stay on as well. So we'll have the 3 goalies there. That's all sorted. In terms of other moves, I think it's pretty obvious who our targets are, as you guys have just been discussing. And I'm interested to see how it plays out. As we know, we're going to need a few cogs to turn in terms of moving some players on. But I think once Arsenal get it's a position where they feel like they can offer enough for Partey's release clause, let's put it like this: I'll be stunned if at some point in this transfer window we don't front the money and activate that release clause. I'll be really surprised if Arsenal don't get to that point. So it'll be interesting to see when, and if there'll be other time to complete other deals, or maybe even if they go all out for a while first. Who knows? But those are clearly the 2 outstanding targets, and I think we're in a good position now with a few weeks of the window left to go all out assault for the ones that we want.
All right. gentlemen, we're kind of reaching a time here. We have a match coming up, West Ham. Again, another promising looking match. We will be back here. All of you who are following us, we'll be back on Thursday, and we'll give that match its full attention. Real good breakdowns. Hopefully, by then we'll have a little more news on possible incomings, whether the push for these two midfielders has picked up steam, whether some players have gone out or they've made it official. Again, it seems things are happening. Maybe not at the pace that we like or expect, but they are happening. Martinez is out. It looks like Torreira will be out. And so when, join us back here in 48 hours and we'll get you set up for the weekend. Hopefully another 3 points. Arsenal's top of the league after 1 week. It'd be nice to see them stay there. All right. So again, for my crew in the UK, for Freddie, for Ryan, for Sam, I'm Raphael. We bid you a brief adieu. We will see you again on Thursday with more exciting Arsenal news. Good night.